You are now tuned in to another episode of Bourbon and Books, the Game Recognized Game podcast with RLJ and Kev.
And welcome to Bourbon and Books on another edition of the Game Recognized Game podcast with RLJ and Kev, along with our dear brother, cousin Jeff.
What up? Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, man. Happy holidays to you both, gentlemen. I'm actually surprised that, we kept this thing pushing through the holidays and actually got through a book over the holidays. That's impressive.
Hey, man, I was on PTO. I had no excuse as to not.
I think we all deserve a pat on the back.
I agree.
For plugging along.
Because we could have given an excuse like, man, it's cold outside.
Yeah, man, it's the break. It's the break, man. It's the break. We'll reconvene in the new year.
Agreed.
Yeah, man. So we picked an interesting book for this month. Has nothing to do with the holidays, by the way, but in the spirit of Black authors, it was somewhat timely. Roland Martin, man. Roland Martin, the acclaimed journalist, media mogul, former CNN contributor, commentator on TV1, owner of the Black Star Network, and where his show is housed, Roland Martin Unfiltered. Roland Martin dropped a book at the end of the year, the last quarter of the year, back in September of 2022, entitled White Fear: How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Crazy. Well, let me reiterate. That was my interpretation. How the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds.
There it is. Because I was like,
yeah.
I don't think that's what it's called.
I think it's all of the above, though.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
The title. So, okay,
yeah.
Sorry, not the title.
Fear.
The
white
cover.
Fear: How the browning of America is making white folks lose their minds.
Initial thoughts on the cover.
The cover summarized the title to me because it's a picture of the January 6th insurrection.
Yes, sir.
At the Capitol. And it's got all of various citizens of America protesting, air quotes, I'm saying that lightly, on the steps of the United States Capitol. We got Confederate flags waving around, American flags waving around, Trump flags waving around, all on the cover. And then white fear is in big, bold white letters.
There's a white man with his arms stretched out like Jesus on the cross.
Like Christ, yeah. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's all. This is what we doing, Roland. Imagery was good.
Yeah. So the title kind of coincided with the picture on the cover of the book, Brother Jay, in my opinion.
Did it cover make you did it entice you to want to dive into this book? Or did it make your chest tight like it did mine?
It made my chest a little tight, right? But I think it was also timely that we picked this book with the January 6th committee report that has come out, the 895 pages of what I like to call pure unadulterated fuckery that I just can't believe happened in the executive branch of the United States of America. I mean, some of the stuff that was kind of called out in the report, I'm just like, what country are we living in, man? That ain't America. So I think it was timely, but yeah, it made my chest tight. But then it's like, all right, well, let's see what he's talking about. But nothing surprised me.
Mm.
So a lot of thoughts my way. First, I'll say, look, how you gonna introduce Roland Martin and not say a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity?
Well, he makes that known himself, and that's what
I was gonna say.
I would say if you read the book, he'll tell you that, and
random.
He has no problem shouting out his fraternity.
It'll be random.
That man proud. Yeah. That man is proud,
and it's okay. And it's so I love all of our Divine Nine brothers and sisters from sea to shining sea, man. Roland Martin is included in that, and lot of great men that he quoted and cited in the book, especially Martin Luther King, who's one of the strongest men of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity that I know or have learned about. Martin Luther King Jr.
Martin Luther the King.
Yeah. And so he's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Yeah.
So no, I just had to say that. Other thing too is definitely have to shout him out, because Roland Martin is actually one of the reasons why the proposal I did went viral. He retweeted it on his social media, as well as when he did his show the next day, and he was recalling the game Howard versus Hampton. He put that picture on there. So shout out to Roland Martin.
Oh, the picture with you just like drinking champagne with him on the deck, on the patio deck. Wasn't that the picture? That's the picture you referring to, right?
No, it was just just a selfie.
It was a selfie.
Me and my fiance at the time, and then Roland Martin.
But y'all was like in the VIP area. That's what like
we were.
Howard and Hampton
Basically said
alums
common
do.
folk couldn't reach them.
Yeah, man.
That's what I heard.
You had to be an alpha or alum of Howard or Hampton. I got you. I'm tracking.
But no,
this has Jack and Jill written all over it. Yeah.
Oh, the privilege.
For the record, I got kicked out of Jack and Jill.
How did you get kicked? We'll talk about that on another
story
show.
For another day.
I'm writing that down because I need to remember that.
But no, shout out to him for that. In terms of this book cover, I would say it made my chest like clench up a little bit. And reason being, growing up, I've never been like a big history buff. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it's been because I never liked the history that they were trying to teach me. For, whatever reason that may be, I've always kind of steered clear of things that kind of delve a lot into just like history pieces. So when I saw this book, by the cover, I'm just like, ooh, and like you said, the kind of the words underneath the title, it tells you what it's going to be about. So I wasn't surprised about what he was going to talk about, but at the same time too, as someone who worked in the government, I just tend to not be engulfed in it, all the time. So I wouldn't say like I was like super excited. However, I'm just gonna keep it real. When I knew how many pages it was, I said, you know what, I can get through this. I can get through this.
Thank you, Roland Martin, for your for being concise.
I agree. I was appreciative. But no, that was my initial like thoughts in terms of the book.
Okay. Yeah, I echo. My chest got tight. And in my head, after we was like, all right, cool, this is what we're gonna read, I looked at the cover. I was like, why the F we picked this book? Like, I'm still not there yet, right? To where I can see something and not be emotionally impacted. Yeah, and triggered. So I was like, all right, I got the Audible book because I knew if something made my chest tight in paperback, I would probably ruin or toss. And so, but yeah, I did. I was definitely looking at the contrast of the colors on the cover. Definitely peeked at the different flags, the political signs for a particular candidate, the guy who was posing it if it was his crucifixion. And I thought the picture was perfect for the subtitle. Because that was a day that this is going to sound horrible. But I'm going to say it anyway. That was the day black people were like, told you. And I can say this with y'all family and our listeners. There was a day like when I first saw it, I was like, oh shit. And then within seconds, I was like, we've been telling you that this existed. So now all of a sudden, and so I get on social media and I'm seeing white tears, right? Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I have nothing to say. People were calling and asking, and I'm a DEI consultant. And so getting on a call immediately afterwards, dealing with a whole lot of white folks that wanted to talk about this and have feelings about it. And I just sat there quiet, muted like this. Once they was done, I was like, okay, great. Now that we've got that out for current events, let's dive into today's agenda, right? I just kept it moving, and people were confused as to like, hey, how is this not bothering you? And I was like, we've told you that this was going to happen. Now look at you. Look at you. Y'all is losing y'all shit on national TV. And for once, it ain't got shit to do with us. Like,
the crazy part about it is, I think I was questioning more so about some of the brothers that was live in the living color in that joint. like the dude that took his album cover. He snapped a picture for his album cover in front of the joint
and ended up in jail, didn't he?
Yeah, they just sentenced him. I think he got 6 months. He got 6 months in jail.
Dumbass.
Yeah, man. 6 months in jail. So it's like, I wonder that the guy that's posing as Jesus Christ on the cover, I wonder did he get at least 6 months? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm curious. I'm curious, man.
Yeah, man. I just, the title, white people was losing their shit. Yes, I agree. When we opened the book and when we hit play, what stood out to you?
Jeff kind of alluded to it earlier. He, was talking about the not necessarily being a history buff. And the one thing that I could appreciate was the context that Brother Martin laid out, giving a historical perspective of significant events in U.S. history where Black and brown people have made progress. And then almost immediately after that progress takes place, something wild happens to set people back. Mm-hmm. And he kind of ends the book. He's talking about the Voting Rights Act. Mm-hmm. He's talking about the Voting Rights Act of 1965, how back in 2013, a certain section of the Voting Rights Act was gutted. And that then brought about a lot of this gerrymandering, redistricting, and voter ID laws across a lot of the southern states to try to prevent people from voting. And that's a direct result of 8 years of power by the first Black president of the United States. And so it wasn't, I was like, oh, it wasn't an aha moment, but I think historically he kind of just rolled out different segments, even after Reconstruction, how a lot of free slaves were getting into political offices and making money. And then all of a sudden you got 80 years of Jim Crow, right? Talks about Greenwood and Tulsa. And then, the Black excellence that was exhibited then, and they burned it to the ground, right? Speaking in terms of a lot of the progress that the civil rights movement made in the 60s, then in the 70s, you still fighting equal housing discrimination. And so it's crazy to me that this concept of white fear, he talks about, it's not really about white privilege or it's not about white privilege, and it's not about white innocence. It's about white ignorance. And that ignorance is essentially played out on both sides of the aisle, regardless if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat, because he also cites, progress of Blacks. And then Bill Clinton has the 94 crime bill that pretty much destroys Black communities for generations and generations. And then he goes into, he kind of starts off the book by talking about the browning of America. By 2043, there's not going to be a majority population. I think white folks will make up about 42% of the population.
They're going down.
And so we will legitimately have a minority majority as it relates to people of color in America by the year 2043. And as he weaves out the historical context, and it gives a pretty, I believe, black and white, no pun intended, look and pathway as far as how we got the 45th president of the United States and what caused that, and the fear associated with that, and the fact that it's really not about race, it's about power. And for Black and brown people to progress and elevate in America, the white fear is that whites will lose something as a result of Black and brown people being elevated. And the catalyst behind that fear, it plays out in very real moments that I think people are just really unaware of.
I agree 100% with that. I mean, you hit on a lot of things that, I would call out. One of the lines I want to read, because just going through this book, it reminded me of something that Van Lathan, and for those who don't remember, Van Lathan was the guy who called out Kanye when he came to TMZ talking crazy. And he was the only one in the room with sense to call him out on his BS. But Van Lathan, it was in probably like a 2-3 minute, and I won't call it like a rant, but he says, the more you read, the more things you will know. That's one line of the whole thing he was talking about. And it was like a podcast. But what he was really speaking to is, one, people need to stop getting on the internet and listening to dumb people. And what he was meaning by dumb people is, you listen to somebody who has looked at a meme, somebody who is just regurgitating for what somebody else has said. He was like, do the work. Do the work means read a book. I'm not going to do it for you. You should not be waiting for somebody else to read something and then always giving you the information. And I felt like that's what this book was. It was only 160 pages, but it gave you a lot of insight when we talk about just Black politics, kind of like in America, and just talking about a lot of those, what I would use is like these catchphrases or words that we've always heard or that we've always seen. One would be white working class. Well, I'm sorry, because they don't even use the word white, but working class. We hear it thrown around a lot, but it's like, who exactly are you talking about when you're talking about this working class? Also, too, again, Kev, you talked about some of this when we talk about, white supremacy, but like, it's really on whiteness and like why Black people will say, hey, like, you're at an advantage. And he talks about how whiteness is a currency.
Yeah.
Whiteness
is a currency. Yeah.
He goes through this book saying, it would be nice to walk into a Walmart and not for someone who worked there to assume that, oh, you're about to steal. He was like, that is privilege and that is a currency like that just we won't have. So I felt like this book really just went through, because it was more than just the basics. Like, you had to have like some form of like knowledge of like what goes on in this political sphere, but it just kind of defined those, or it kind of just put stuff together. And I'm going to say this because, a lot of people don't want to be real about, politics and like what they know, or if a new term. I may be the last person on earth, but I did not know that Donald Trump stole that slogan from Ronald Reagan. And
he stole the whole playbook.
Right.
He stole his whole playbook. Yeah.
I wasn't even like aware. And again, this comes back to just like reading and knowing. And I get it when we say, if you don't know your history, it's just gonna repeat itself. A lot of times folks aren't doing anything new. You see that in a lot of stuff in world music. Oh, you get old enough, you're like, oh, I know that song. I know one, you think it's the original. It ain't even an original. It's a copy of somebody else done did it. I mean, look, some of Luther's best songs, I feel like them things weren't originals. But he sung them like it was his.
He sung the hell out of them covers, man. Made them joints.
But my point is just like with the whole history piece is when you know history, then everything that's happening or about to happen, you can call it before it occurs. And I liked a lot of what this book did was basically, it just gave you, I feel like, niblets or like just nuggets of information and just piece things together to say, hey, look, follow this and you will see what will happen. Last thing I'll say too is what you find a lot, and I won't just say like from this book, but one of the conclusions that I feel like I came up with in terms of Democrats and Republicans, I feel like Democrats, we played a short game. We always thinking about like the now, True. Oh, we had a black president, like, oh, we good. Or oh, VP was black. Or, oh, I voted. That was good enough. And I voted for the president of the US, not even thinking about like your local elections. And you're thinking about like mainly the short term. I feel like what Republicans be doing, they be thinking like long term. Okay, what would this mean a decade or 2 decades from now? Like, how are we positioning this particular appointee? And I think that's something that we just have to do a little bit better with in terms of politics, but just like in life, not just thinking about short term, but thinking about long term. And I like that this book kind of, from my perspective, like it talked about it in a certain viewpoint, if I should say.
And to your point, Jeff, one of the things that he calls out in the book, he talks about the judicial system in America and the fact that Obama appointed, he tried to appoint over 100 judges to various levels of the bench, including Merrick Garland, his last appointee to the Supreme Court bench, and they were all blocked.
Yep.
But then, a Republican-controlled Senate then goes back and, kind of does the opposite for Trump. So when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passes away, within 2 months, they got some white woman who was unqualified to fill her place. And so when you talk about playing that long game, the long game that was really eye-opening for me in the book was the fact that 45 appointed over 350 judges to district court benches, appellate court benches, three Supreme Court justices. And the strategy was that they were going to appoint people that were young, starting at the age of 35, all the way to maybe 50. So now you have a judicial system that has a very, very conservative and right-wing approach to law that's going to be in place for the next 2 generations. So when you talk about long game, like McConnell, that's the play. And then when you think about the fact that America is becoming less white because white folks are having fewer babies, and the birth rate and the death rate are running neck and neck right now.
Opioid crisis.
Exactly. And so now, when you think about that, the fact that white folks will be in the minority at some point, but at the same time, over 85% of these appointees were white. 76% of those appointees were white men. You running the game. You running the game for the next 50 years. With one simple stroke of a pen. Yeah. So you're right. I think that was a call out that stung a little bit. People not playing the long game.
Yeah, I would say moving my biases out of the way, and particularly the ones pertaining to the man that wrote the book. I appreciated the historical breakdown for the background. And I felt as if the book was a longer editorial piece. The way it flowed. I'm going to give you some breakdown, some context for the content, and then boom. Most of the things that he shared, I heard over the past year or so, that was relevant, right, to the time. In addition to the historical context, a lot of that stuff we didn't learn in, public schools unless you had a black teacher that went beyond the little 4-sentence paragraph in your social studies book. So I think it was refreshing to hear all of this put into context for the content in which he was writing. Do I think the book could have been a little longer? I think the action items portion could have been more, I don't know, descriptive. I think there could have been, it felt rushed. The action items felt rushed. Like, oh, let me go ahead and end this. I got a word limit. If I reach so many words, maybe I got to pay another tier membership for the whatever. I don't know. That's what it felt like. But overall, I thought it was a good read. I do believe that the book was not written for us. Unfortunately, I don't believe the people it was written for will be reading the book. Right now. Will they eventually read it? I think some will read it to find out what the hell was in the book so they can talk about it amongst their friends. But I do think as we continue to have the browning of America, I think there is also a turn that has taken place with those who don't fit into the black or brown categories. I think they're slowly starting to see, right? He talked about the white ignorance. They're slowly starting to see, oh shit, maybe we do need to evolve our thinking, or maybe I need to cuss my aunt out or my uncle out that's racist. I might need to stop supporting these individuals who support the things that were just discussed here. Like when he broke down CRT, that made my chest tight. But it was another attempt to remain superior, right? Like if we let the masses know that this is what really happened, like there's no coming back from a lot of this shit. Even though it's in black and white and it's in movies and people are starting to get exposed to it, they're like, yeah, no, until we say it's true, it's not true. We call that delusion. But, overall, I think the book, it was a solid read. I wish there was more to chew on in terms of the action items.
So I have a question based off of actually a line that he says in the book. It's actually a phrase. He says, we're doing a disservice to ourselves if when we go home at the end of the day, we only associate with the same kind of people and never venture outside of our comfort zone to eat with other people, worship with other people, or understand the cultures and opinions of others. We are living a lie every day if we don't acknowledge the truth of how we're living in this country. So I guess my question is like, are we doing ourselves a disservice by, we work a 9 to 5, for the most part, our jobs are diverse. And if what I would categorize on our free time, things and places where we control, we can decide what we want to do. Like we should also now we should be intentional of diversifying like these spaces and things that we do. Is like, one, do you do those things, and do you think yourself or we are doing ourselves a disservice by not doing that if you don't?
I have kind of two trains of thought on that. I mean, I understand what he was saying. I think I understood it more when he kind of referenced to Ronald's point. If you live in a predominantly white neighborhood and you're white and your children are white and all your children play with are white kids, and you attend a white church and you go to a predominantly white school, and every person in your social circle is white, to challenge the question, why is everyone in my neighborhood, in my community, white? Why aren't there any other people of color? If we are kind of going down this pathway to becoming a country where there are more minorities than white folks. And so I think part of that was a challenge to white folk. I think being Black in America, you kind of have two trains of thought, right? To your point, Jeff, I want to work and get my education and make some money and take care of my family and set my family up for the future. Yes, I think the quote, he's also challenging us to not be complacent with just doing that, to say, all right, if you are a member in government, don't just work and do your 20 years and retire. Try to elevate and get into rooms that maybe we aren't accustomed to getting in, or try to figure out how you can gain more influence and power within that structure to open up more opportunities for more Black people. That is one of those cases where it's like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, because on one end, that takes work, that takes you being uncomfortable, that takes you probably going through some challenges and conflict to get there. I don't know if the spirit of our ancestors that fought during the Civil War or post Reconstruction or during the Civil Rights Movement, they fought and they had to be progressive. They had to not accept no for an answer, right? I think currently Black folks in America, you kind of have two factions. You have Black folks that don't care, and you have Black folks that just care about themselves. And because the collective, we're not a monolithic race, we don't have a monolithic way of thinking. People have different interpretations of what's right. And so I think the quote was really to try to challenge people to not settle, because there's still a fight going on and we're losing the battle. And if we don't take a stand for something, then we're gonna continue to be victimized. So I don't know what the right answer to your question is. I just think, and I feel as if Black folks been struggling, man. And when you get a little piece of whatever success looks like in your mind and within your community, you want to hold on to it. And it's crazy because we are in a system that's not a system of our own, and we become like the system. So we're in a capitalistic society. It's dog eat dog. Let me get mine. I don't care about you. And that way of thinking and that level of white fear, I also believe has infiltrated the Black community as well. Because if that's the case, how else would you get somebody like Clarence Thomas, man? Clarence Clarence Thomas was appointed to the Supreme Court bench after Thurgood Marshall passed away, man. Think about that. Completely different perspective, completely different view.
Completely different wife.
Yeah, oh man, that's not even getting to that. But but a different perspective. And I think, as we evolve as a people, you got people like Clarence Thomas that really believe in his heart of hearts that, the Voting Rights Act is unnecessary. But at the same time, he's benefiting from the Voting Rights Act being gutted. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know the answer to that question. I just know I think it's and to Ronald, to your point, I think he dropped the ball of really establishing a greater call to action that was meaningful. Like, for example, should we want to aspire to get into the C-suite of organizations? Do we want, as Black folks, Black Gen Xers and millennials, should we want to aspire to hold political office? Should we want to aspire to gain influence and power and economic worth to make the change from within? Yes, but different strokes for different folks. Everybody not built like that. It's unfortunate, but everybody ain't built like that. So I think he kind of dropped the ball in that regard. And then another thing that I didn't really, I'm gonna hold him accountable, but I understand if 55% of white women voted for 45, or the first when he was elected, I think 52% of white women voted for 45. And the most recent presidential election, 55% of white women voted for 45. But at the same time, you want to talk about women's rights, and you voted for the dude that supported the Supreme Court justices to pretty much shit on women's rights and eliminate Roe v. Wade. So, like, who are you holding accountable? Like, it ain't, because this is the thing that I get tired of the Democratic Party when it comes to Black folks. The Democratic Party expect their wins and losses to fall solely on the backs of Black folks, turning out Black folks to vote. If we lose Georgia, it's because we didn't turn out the Black vote. If we lose Pennsylvania, it's because we didn't turn out the Black vote. But at the same time, as Brother Martin pointed out, where were the election lies really started? Black cities: Milwaukee, Detroit, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. And so even the Republicans are kind of using that mantra against us, like, well, yeah, we got to keep the Blacks from voting. And then you got white folks saying, well, we got to turn out the Black vote, but you're not doing anything to support voting rights legislation. You're not doing anything to support policing and getting the George Floyd police reform bill across, or the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill supported. So it's almost as if, like, don't hold us accountable, hold everybody accountable. But I just think it's gonna come a reckoning in America in about another 20 years, that the people who have had the power and the influence, they're gonna feel a certain kind of way, because there's gonna be a different narrative told about American history. Because I as an American have experienced America different than you, different than Ronald. The same way a Asian brother or sister has experienced America, or a Latin brother or sister, or a Native American brother or sister has experienced America. So, like, we're becoming more mature within this system, and he's challenging us to try to make change, but he's not necessarily saying how, because you've already identified a structure that is prohibitive.
I would say, for your question, my perspective is he's not wanting the reader to do it every day. Like, when you come home and X, Y, and Z, I think it is a moment of reflection. Like, let me take into consideration these things. To Jeff's point, I think that the intention was for those folks on the cover that are losing their mind to exercise it more so than those who weren't there. Because all day long, we're living in a diverse world. Whether you want to believe it or not, I think about organizations that I worked in and it was predominantly black. It was just a microcosm of like what we really were experiencing. Because when we walked outside of those doors, everyone wasn't like the people we worked with. Public transit. You go, even when you live in predominantly black or brown cities, gentrification. And so we're constantly dwelling among those that don't look like us. Because we got to live. Those that don't look like us are doing so in terms of like the lack of browning that they are around. Like that's intentional, right? Like they are putting things in place to prevent us from moving into their neighborhoods, right? Like when you think about the housing situation, yeah, I want to live in that neighborhood, but you just told me that the house was 6'5". But I look around and no other house in the neighborhood is worth 6'5". And the person that doesn't look like me just bought it for 2.5. So of course you're not going to have anybody that doesn't look like us in the neighborhood, because initially, once you tell us the price, be like, no, we're not going to investigate. We're not going to fight. We're going to go somewhere where we can get good customer service, be respected as a human, and live a pretty decent life. To your point in terms of like the recharging, I ain't gonna hold you. After a 9 to 5, no. Hell, I don't want to hang out with people that look like me. The hell, I'm gonna hang out with people who intentionally don't look like me. Like, and I'm exhausted because chances are I was dealing with y'all all day at work. And not because we work together, but because we work for the same company and you've been a progress blocker all day. So now you want me to eat? No, I'm not going to do it. But
and you don't have the currency that they have.
That part, right? Like you caused hell all day to these people trying to do their job. And now you want to get invited to commune? No, that's not how that works. And I just when I think about like my circles are very diverse, with the exception of one race. Right? There's different religions present, different nationalities, different ethnic and racial groups, different languages, different cultural groups. Right? So all the things that make us as melanated people beautiful, they're all in my group. In my circles. I would say that I don't have many people that aren't within the black and brown melanated group in my circles as one. No. like there's a lack of trust because of history. And then the things that he discussed in the book. And so a lot of the times when we get together, it's a support group to how we manage this world and systems that were created for us not to prosper. And I remember one of my colleagues said something once before. He was like, we all know that there are systems in place, and if we ever benefit from it, it's not because it was by design. So to bring it back to your question, my groups are very diverse. Am I coming home from work and say, hey, let's sing Kumbaya? No. because I've been singing Kumbaya all day. And when I come home to my sanctuary, no, I don't want you to be here. Right? This is not the time for us to have political debates, and I'm not interested in learning about your culture. Right? That will soon become a minority here, right? I'm not interested in hearing about white ignorance. I'm just not. Not after dealing with it throughout the day and navigating around it so I don't go to jail and I can still collect my check. Yeah, I'm not interested in doing that. And I highly doubt that he's doing this every day. I highly doubt. Sounds good.
Oh, he talking trash. He talking trash. You know what I'm saying? He definitely talking trash.
It sounds good, but I mean, I'm pretty sure he ain't got no dinner guests that don't look like him every day at the Roland Martin. But I mean, it sounded good. The rhetoric sounded good.
I haven't seen a white correspondent on his show.
All right, Black Power
like,
Fist scale.
That's like no, real talk. To answer the question, I don't even recall seeing a white correspondent on his show, Roland Martin Unfiltered. That's like a routine guest, up there. So I'm not sure.
There you have it. But on the Black Power Fist scale, what say ye?
Man, I thought it was a solid read over the holidays, man. It kind of gave me something to take my mind off of what was really going on. I find these books, and this is probably like the second book we've read that was referencing and citing historical events of the last 3 years. And so I find hearing these things, I don't know if I'm numb to it or if the events haven't settled in for me, or if they've settled in for me. And so some of it I can't take it seriously because, like, even starting off the book with the January 6th insurrection, I'm like, I don't think white folks taking that serious. So why should I take it seriously? Because I mean, my heart of hearts, like you said, I ain't gonna hold you. My heart of hearts, man, I feel like the January 6th committee and that 900 pages they put out, man, that joint gonna end up in the shredded box over the next 6 months, man. Like I just don't see. Yeah, I don't see like any tangible results coming from it, unfortunately.
Are they gonna be teaching it in school?
That part, right? And if they're going to teach it in school, are they going to really teach the true context of it all, or are they going to whitewash it?
See what you did there?
Right. So to that point, man, I'm gonna still give the book a solid 4 fists, because I do think it's important that we collectively have a good understanding of what's going on and what's taking place. And then we can choose to indulge or not, right? And so I appreciate the fact that he kind of laid out a historical context. I appreciate the fact that he tried to challenge the establishment, where I couldn't really get down. I don't think he did enough to really challenge the white liberal power structure, to be frank with you. Because one of the things that he keeps reiterating throughout the book is how white silence is part of the problem as well. And if you're gonna hold Mitch McConnell to a certain standard, then you gotta hold Bernie Sanders to that same standard. You gotta hold Elizabeth Warren to that same standard. You gotta hold Tim Kaine or Mark Warner in Virginia here to that same standard. Because at the end of the day, they all share the same common currency, regardless of your political affiliation. And so I don't think he really did. I think he walked on eggshells with that, because white liberals that they're his supporters. And he don't hide it. So, but I give it 4 fists, man. I thought it was a solid read. I would encourage, if you just looking for a nice little book, short book over the holidays, or while you got some downtime, check it out. And hopefully it at least get you thinking about how you can make a difference on the local, state, and even federal political systems. I didn't get a sense that it would inspire me to, go out and be great and pick up my John Lewis flag and keep it pushing, because like you said, Brother Jay, I pick up my John Lewis flag every day in the spaces that I'm in. So 4 fists for me.
I will add on to that by saying, starting off what I talked about in the beginning. As Ronald kind of said, this book title or this cover made me tighten up my chest a little bit. But I think in terms of when we talk race in America, I feel like we just conditioned at this point to whether you black, brown, or white. It's just like something where people get a little hesitant to talk about. And because of that, I didn't really have high expectations in terms of this book, because it wasn't subject matter that I would have gravitated to, nor would I have suggested. However, I'm gonna keep it real like I always do. Book wasn't too long, so I said, why not? Why not? What's the worst that can happen? And I think I was a bit, so I actually bought the hardcover book, and I was a bit intentional on doing that because, one, it's like, to a certain extent, like I wanted to support Roland Martin in his book. And I'm not saying you can't do that in Audible, but, if when he's like looking at data, like, oh, I sold this book out at Barnes and Noble, or I sold it out in X place, I wanted to kind of contribute to it. I will say this, or a few things that I noticed. A lot of these bookstores only had one copy, which I thought was a bit interesting. The other thing is, the first time that I went and I asked for the book, they couldn't find this one copy, but I was kind of like, almost like, y'all got white fear? And I was like, why? I'm like, why am I whispering? Do you have white fear? Like, that's the book that I came to get and read. And who was looking for this book for me? A white person, which made it, at first it made it a little bit awkward, but I was like, you know what? We got to start getting uncomfortable about these titles and what's going on in America. So,
because I'm gonna shout it.
Oh. Hey man, but that's what he was talking about, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are the change.
Yeah, and
y'all got that white fear up in here. The book.
Yo, man, you got that white fear on the shelf? Why you ain't got it?
Oh, you sold out?
You sold out of your white fear?
Got it, okay.
No, it was always, we supposed to have one copy. I'm like, only one?
Let me see if I can.
But yeah, so I was intentional about buying the book. And I just noticed like kind of like that behavior with me. Going back to what Van Lathan said, I think it's important that Black folks read, especially when it comes to history of this country. We cannot rely on a friend to tell us all this information, or a couple of memes that we're seeing here and there. We don't know who created them. There is no citations at the bottom. It's just such and such put this meme together. Or you have, the one person who is a bit woke. They've done like their own research, but they probably are also communicating a way on their platform that's benefiting them. And they still may not be telling the whole story, because you need to know things in context. With that being said, I don't think this book was the end all be all, meaning that in terms of race relations in America, this book is not going to do all of that for you. However, I think this book is a good starter. And I still think that this should be a part of someone's like toolkit. in terms of just like, what does that look like? You know, how did we kind of end up here? You know, I'm hearing like these terms, where it's not even where do these terms come from. It's like in short narratives, like what does that mean? It doesn't take a whole chapter to tell me what does the middle class mean. I can tell you in a sentence or two, and so that it makes sense. So I appreciated that this book, you know, it was short, but it wasn't difficult language that was being utilized. As a result, I'm gonna go ahead and give it I'm gonna give it 4 fists as well. I think it was a pretty solid again. And I'm saying that from how I think it should be utilized. I don't think for someone who is maybe super woke, or you know, they have a lot of information and they've done a lot of their homework research, they read a lot of books on like race in America, this may be too elementary for them. But I think when you are talking to like, and they don't have to just be a colleague or a neighbor, because I feel like for Black, brown, or white folks, like when you talk about a collection of books that they may want to take a look at, I would say, hey, you may want to take a look at this.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. I will say I'm going to give it a 2.5. The listeners can't see the reaction of Kev and cousin Jeff. But they losing their shit over there. And I don't, Jeff, go to mute because he's screaming. Yep, 2.5. Do I think white folks need to read this? Yes. Do I think they need to pass it out around Christmas and put it in stockings? Absolutely. But not only read it, I think they need to actually put some things into action so that we don't have to keep reading and writing books like this, right? Like, this shit we've been telling you about, like, it's not new. And so I can go on a rant, but, you know, similar to what Kev said about the women's rights thing, it's like, y'all voted for him. And now you want to make all this noise. You want to rally. You want to pull all of the marginalized people who are being negatively impacted by this, the policies and the systems that are in place. You want us to make some noise because now you're impacted. But that white silence was real over the past 400 years. No. Read it, take action. But with my 2.5 fist, it gives us a 3.5 of average score on the Black Power Fist scale for the Bourbon and Books with the Can't Recognize Game Show with RLJ and Kev. Go ahead and say what you need to say, because I see it on y'all's faces. Like,
man,
I have no words.
I'm just weak, man. I say you gave this book 2.5 because it was Roland Martin.
That's what I feel like. That's what I feel like.
No,
listen, as a therapist, I will tell you that your feelings are always valid. They may not be true, but they are valid, right? I can't tell you how to feel about the information that I just gave.
Oh man, yo. Roland said, yo, man, you gotta be, we are the change, brother Jay. Yep. We are the change.
Sure are.
Oh man. Hey man, well, you know, brother Martin, man, you know, I keep doing what you're doing in media. Keep trying to educate, keep trying to influence, man. I ain't knocking you, but you know, we support you, man. You got a C+.
You got a friend in 2 out of 3 of us.
Yeah, man. You got a friend. You got a friend in a few of us, man. You know, but that's the beauty. That's the beauty of Black people, man. We all don't think the same, and everything don't move for everybody, you know. So on that note, 3.5 fists on the Black Power Fist scale on this month's edition of Bourbon and Books on the Game Recognized Game podcast with RLJ and our boy and brother, cousin Jeff. White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Mind by Roland S. Martin. From Roland Martin Unfiltered, also a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. You're welcome for your 3.5 fists on the Black Power Fist scale. Until next time, man, keep reading. Black men read, black men discuss, black men communicate. And until next time, and we see you all in the new year, be light.
Be easy.
Be
better than 2.5.
Yes. Yeah. It sucks that we started the year off with a 2.5, but whatever, you know. Okay, Sarah. Be like.